RGE here with a look at Tower Wars, the first game from Supervillain Studios. This is probably going to be a pretty short video because I don't know how much I can really talk about a tower defense game. So, Tower Wars is a competitive, multiplayer tower defense game. It's supposed to come out this summer for PC, and then a later date for 360 and PS3. This game is really focused on its steampunk art style. It does it pretty decently. I mean, in the UI, you can see you have big brass buttons that have unit icons on them. You have brass pipes running around. For example, in the upgrade menu, your units are displayed on brass buttons, and between the buttons, there's these brass pipes that run through to indicate the upgrade paths, and then the pipes look like they have water running through them when the upgrade path has been unlocked. It'll make sense when you see it. Games consist of two teams playing against each other. The teams have 1 to 3 players on them, as in you have 1v1s, 2v2s, and 3v3s. In this version of the beta, there were also only 3 maps, or at least only 3 maps that I played. Obviously, it's beta. Things will get added and removed, so things like team sizes can be changed. In this, you have 2 currencies. You have gold. Gold you use on purchasing towers and purchasing units, and also on some upgrades. You also have battle points. Battle points are used for unlocking unit types and purchasing upgrades, also buying miners. So you have mines on your half of the map, and they need to be populated with miners and upgraded to increase your per minute income. You have a steady income as a result of having a bunch of miners, basically. And the income increases substantially as you buy more miners and upgrade the mines. It's actually one of the things that make this game really challenging as a tower defense game, is that you have the 3 major things that you have to manage. You have to manage your economy, as in how much gold you're pulling in. You have to make sure that you have the correct amount of towers and the correct types of towers for the units that are being sent at you by the opposing team. And you have to make sure that you're sending enough units and the correct type of units to be able to attack the enemy team's castle. So, I mentioned battle points. Those are interesting. They're generated by sending units at the other team. It's what is supposed to motivate you to attack the other team, rather than just stacking towers and also just trying to win the game. But you need battle points and able to buy more unit types and upgrade units. And obviously, once the other team has a lot of gold, they're going to have a lot of towers and a lot of upgraded towers. So you can't just send the weakest type of unit that you have unlocked right away. So you have to be making sure to get enough battle points as the match progresses to still have strong enough units to force the other team to be building towers. Now, battle points are generated when units are sent at the other team, but they're also generated for how long the unit stays alive. If the unit dies right away, he basically doesn't generate any battle points. If he goes and beats up on their castle for 4 or 5 minutes, he generates a ton of battle points. And that's really what will make you want to build those stronger units, because they will generate a substantially larger amount of battle points in comparison to, let's say, the very first unit that you get, who will probably die from, like, the very first arrow tower that he walks into. Now, you may have noticed that the tiles on the ground aren't squares. They're hexes in this game. This game uses hexagons for the tiling, and it makes the mazing more challenging. Just because I'm not used to mazing in a tower defense game with hexes, so I'm not really sure on the optimal strategy for how you maze them. Also, the maps aren't very traditionally shaped. Like, you get a lot of sections of the map, and you have to maze all of the sections individually, but you also want to strategize how you're mazing them into the next section, because between each section of the map, there's usually multiple pathways leading to other sections, and so they'll obviously go through the shortest possible way, but you could send them, like, let's say we have sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. They walk into section 1. 1 will be attached to section 2, 3, and 4. Now I can block off 2 and 3, send them to 4. 4 will then be attached to, let's say, like 3 and the castle. So then you block off the castle, and then you send them to section 3. So you need to try to figure out how you're going to maze them between all of the sections of the map. It'll make more sense, obviously, when you're playing the game. And if you look at the video, you can see, like, for example, there's staircases going down. They can go on those staircases. That's part of their pathing. There's also bridges in some of the other maps. They go across the bridges, but there'll be multiple bridges on one section. So you'll need to appropriately block them off. All this mazing stuff will make more sense if you actually are playing the game, obviously. Min-maxing is a really important part of tower defense games. It's how you win. However, in this, it's a lot harder to do because the unit composition and the timing is always different because it's decided by your opponents. Basically, you're going to always have to modify your strategy for every single game, just because you're never going to get the same set of units sent at you at the same time. So you need to really watch and start thinking ahead about what it is that your opponent can afford and what it is that they should have unlocked at any time. Now, you can do this because you should be able to estimate how many battle points they have and how far they can get through the upgrade tree. Also, if you look at, like, the health levels of some of their lower units, you can start looking at what kind of upgrades they've been purchasing, whether or not they've been going straight into upgrades like health and speed and shields and such, rather than unlocking more unit types like healers or transport vehicles. So you need to start making assumptions on what it is that they could do at any time. It's kind of like in StarCraft, you start looking at what it is they've been building, and then start thinking what build they're going to go with, and then how you can counter that build. In this, you need to start thinking what units they have, what unit you think they're going to get next, and then build the appropriate towers to combat those units. It brings a real level of depth to the game. More so than any other tower defense game that I've played. It feels like a real strategy game in that sense. The economic system and the upgrade system in this game are fairly involved. There's a lot of strategy, once again, hooked into what units that you've been building, and how many units the enemy is sending at you, and really just trying to balance everything. The balancing of the economics and units and towers is just, it's frustratingly hard for me, because I'm not particularly good at any kind of real-time strategy games, nor am I good at tower defense games. I'm good at, like, grand strategy games like Civ. And so, to be doing all this stuff in real time, I find it hard. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but micromanaging all these things, that should be hard, right? It brings a level of challenge to the game that I certainly haven't seen in any other tower defense games. In many ways, though, this game does remind me of Legion TD for Warcraft 3, in that you have to appropriately balance, once again, towers, units, and economy. But in Tower Wars, it really emphasizes this and builds on it a lot. It's much more involved in balancing these things than any kind of mod for any RTSs that I've played. When you're playing with multiple people on your team, it seems that the best strategy is that you get each person to focus on one thing. Like, one person builds units and focuses on upgrading the mine, and another person goes all towers, and another person goes, like, units and towers. It seems to work okay, because then you're focusing on less things, but then you also become really dependent on the other two people not messing up. You also want to time when you guys attack with units. Like, you want to send all your waves at once, obviously. You don't want to send them one wave at a time. You want to send all 3 waves at the exact same time. That's probably the best strategy for pushing through the mazes. This game just, it's a lot more involved than any other tower defense game I've ever bothered playing. It's good. The best strategy seems to be that you want to really push out a stronger unit as fast as you can. That way you force the other team to start building really strong towers. And then once that happens, they'll rarely make a comeback and be able to start sending their own units. So you can really just push hard early and continue to push hard if you want to win. I've rarely been able to make a comeback. The few times I have, it's been short-lived. It's a hard game. I think that fans of tower defense are really going to enjoy this game because of the fact that there's real challenge, possibly, if you're playing against people who are good at the game. There certainly is a learning curve to this game, even if you've played a tower defense before. Like, I've played plenty of TDs, but I'm still terrible at this. I've played about 15 games and I just haven't figured it all out yet. Every time that I think I know a good strategy, I try it, and the person that I play against just crushes it. And I just don't really make enough adaptations to my strategy to be good. You have to adapt and change your plan, like a real RTS. And that's an interesting thing to have in a tower defense game. There's currently one issue that I have with this game. It's actually a technical issue. You seem to get crazy frame drops, and the frame rate you can't push particularly high when you get later into the game. If you get a lot of towers and a lot of units out, like, I dropped down to around a solid 20 FPS, but for a tower defense game and even a strategy game, like, I've played lots of RTS games with more stuff going on the screen that have looked better and still ran a solid 60 FPS. In this, I pretty quickly end up dropping down to like 20 FPS and staying there. Now, I know that part of the issue is with ambient occlusion in this game, but even when that's turned off completely, I still get the huge frame drops around mid-game, and then they never pick back up. I rarely drop below 15, but still, it's not that it's unplayable in this game, because I mean, it's tower defense, the most part, it's static. You don't need crazy fast reaction times or anything like that, but it's still an issue. They need to basically fix some graphic problems and optimize it better. It's beta, they can fix that. The price for Tower Wars has not yet been announced. However, it could be an issue. At about $5, I could see myself buying this game, playing it for 3 hours, and not being disappointed. Now, at $10, it really becomes something that is just for fans of the genre. You're gonna have to play the game for a long time to really get your money out of it, and you're not going to want to play it for a long time unless you really like tower defenses. So, that is something to keep a lookout for. I mean, it hasn't been announced yet, but if it's too expensive, there's no way that I could consider buying this. And at more than $10, I don't think I could ever put enough time into the game to really think that I got my money's worth out of this game. Overall, Tower Wars is a really good game. It really adds some stuff. It builds on top of what's already been laid down by some really great tower defense mods. And it brings some great graphics, a good style. The game comes together really well. But once again, if the price isn't there, if it's too high, then this game's just not worth it. Because at the end of the day, it's just a tower defense game.